As Iowa season comes to an end in the Big Ten tournament to Illinois, it is time for Fran McCaffery to move on. Iowa, Beth Goetz, let's make the choice. Today, Locked On Hawkeye.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, hit the subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Iowa falls at the hands of the Illini as they go down in typical Iowa basketball fashion. It is overall a game giving up 106 points. Fran McCaffery ejected, on and on and on. So we have a lot to talk about today. We'll take a look back at the matchup against Illinois, what we saw on Thursday night as Iowa falls 106-94. Obviously, the high water marks that were in there. Payton Sandfort and what he was able to do, tying a career high with 30 points, getting that shot finally back. And we've been waiting for that throughout the course of the season. Josh Dix, what he was able to put together, just a lot of good stories, at least offensively. And then there's the other stories on the defensive end of the floor, Fran McCaffery, on and on and on. So we will get into that. And of course, we need to talk about the future. And the time now is here for Beth Goetz to make the decision of what she's going to do, where this program sits, and financially where Iowa is. We are going to dive into all of that today in a very important episode of Locked On Hawkeyes, breaking down what the future looks like and where we go from here. But first, a look back at the game and what we saw on that front. So I mentioned it at the top. Payton Sandfort, the play that we saw out of him, he got going there in the first half, and you could see that confidence starting to build. And it really was a great thing. You know, this is not to be all fanboy and looking at it only through those glasses. And we try to stay as objective as possible while still understanding and maintaining that fandom that I have. But to see a kid like that, the way that he came off the floor, tears in his eyes, hugging people on the sideline, you knew what it meant for him to be an Iowa Hawkeye. And for myself growing up a Hawkeye fan, I talk a ton about growing up in the 80s and what that was like and the importance of Iowa basketball just in being an Iowan. It was a huge part of everyday conversation during the wintertime was Iowa basketball, wherever you went. And that obviously is not the case anymore. And we see it with attendance. We know it's not the same just in general with sports viewing. It's a different era. It's a different world. We're going to talk about that different world a little bit later on. But there was also another important piece, and that was that Iowan guy. Yeah, of course, we loved B.J. Armstrong and Roy Marble and Ed Horton, and we loved Chris Kingsbury. But there was something extra special about the Iowa kids. Of course, Chris Street, who tragically, his life came to a close. But the other ones too. The hardworking guys. The guys that just wanted to wear the black and gold. And that's what you got with Payton Sandfort. The importance to the Iowa basketball program. He was a great steward of this basketball program. And yes, you would have loved to see more successes. I'd love to be able to see more from him. And you go back a couple years ago and what could have been in that NCAA tournament run after they win the Big Ten title his freshman campaign. But it didn't happen. It's not to knock Payton Sandfort for what he did. He gave it his all. And he grinded throughout a senior year that did not go anywhere close to where he thought. Last year, Iowa was a bubble team. They couldn't even get to that this year. He had teammates that ended their season early, and Owen Freeman. And it was not just him banged up, it was other guys. And yet, he was still out there grinding, gutting it out, trying to do everything possible, not for the name on the back of the jersey, for the name on the front. And for that, Payton Sandfort needs to be commended. He needs to be celebrated. He needs to be looked at as one of those guys that we're happy to call Hawkeyes. And the death threats and the ridiculous nature of that, grow up, people. This kid gave his all for the university, for the Hawkeye program. He gave everything that he could. Payton Sandfort, tip of the ball cap. Absolutely tip of the ball cap to you and what you're able to do to this program. We didn't get to the heights we wanted. We didn't win the games we wanted in the NCAA tournament. You think it frustrates us? It also frustrates those guys in the locker room. And they understand what this season was. They understand that this season easily could have been much different than it ended up being. But here we are. And this is the reality. Now, when we look at things big picture, giving up 106 points, an Illinois team that came in shooting 31% from the three-point line goes 12 of 26. And it's not like they were hitting a lot of those three-pointers with a hand right in their face. There were a couple, but it was a rarity. Just absolutely pulverized on the boards. 41-23. Give up 14 offensive rebounds. There was a period in the first half where Illinois had 12 rebounds, 6 of them offensive. 12 missed shots, 6 offensive rebounds. It means it was 50-50 proposition of just getting a rebound on that end of the floor. And it's more of the same. And it's more of the same for this program and for Fran McCaffery. And that's where we'll go next. Josh Dix got it going again, 10 of 17 from the floor. I would have loved to see Josh Dix throughout the course of the year take 17 shots every game. Would have loved to see that. Thought we saw some good things. Dembele was giving up a ton of size inside. Could he be a piece going forward? Drew Thelwell, 12 points, 6 rebounds. Got knocked down those free throws. That was a problem in the first half. I think it's going to be a little bit tighter. Price came in and it continues to play at a high level. Peyton Sandfort was a guy I didn't know where he was going to fit. I didn't know with this squad where he was going to be. Evan Bronze, again, finishing his career the way that he did in a Hawkeye uniform for an Iowa City kid. Another great story. Now, this is going to be another piece of the story that I'm going to remember for a long time or wonder about for a long time. It would have been different inside if we would have saw Evan Bronze a little bit more. Because it's not just that he's a stud athlete, and he is, and we see that leaping ability that Evan Bronze has, but also he's a guy that could handle the touch, kind of up in front. If there would have been a little more high-low action with him and Freeman early in the season, if we would have saw Freeman, who developed that outside shot, be on the high part of it, Bronze down low, and then vice versa, because of the passing ability from Evan Bronze, it's going to linger for a while of what could have been, and if there was maybe some more substitution patterns that would have made sense. And if he could have been a guy that gives you 10 minutes a game and you play a couple of bigs together, but of course, we'll never know. Riley Mulvey, last Thursday, he went through senior day activities. And though he has another year of eligibility, the likelihood his career is over. But the big question that remains is the big man at the top. Fran McCaffery gets ejected from the game. Back-to-back technical fouls. And it wasn't that he was flying off the handle any more than we've seen in the past. In fact, for Fran, other years, that was pretty subdued. I didn't hear the magic word. I didn't see it lipped, the magic word. But it ends like that. We'll talk about Fran McCaffery, his future, the decision of Beth Goetz. What happens next? Fran, time to say goodbye. That's where we are. Locked on Hawkeyes. We're all about the stats because numbers don't lie. And when it comes to the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X, the numbers are on an MVP level. With the ability to tow up to 8,500 pounds, it can quite literally carry the whole team, plus the gear, wherever you need to go. It's powered by a twin-turbo V6 engine, delivering the strength and performance to handle highways, back roads, and everything in between. And with room for up to 8 people, the Armada Pro 4X is built for big crews, big adventures, and even bigger memories. Whether you're exploring off-road trails or rolling up to the arena, the Armada Pro 4X brings power, versatility, and style wherever you go. Take your adventures to new heights in the all-new Nissan Armada Pro 4X. Learn more at nissanusa.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. March Madness, it is here, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I got my eye on a few underdogs this year, taking a look a little bit deeper, got them to go to the Final Four. Even without the bracket in front of you, you can bet on the futures. FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props as well. And the tournament games happening almost every day. There's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app, it is simple to use. And when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long with FanDuel and online at FanDuel.com. Trent Condon back with you once again on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. If you're watching on YouTube, hit subscribe. Just takes a moment. If you are listening on the audio side, 5-star reviews helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Well, let's get back into it and the lingering question of what the decision for Iowa Athletic Director Beth Goetz is going to be and what she's going to do with this basketball program. You look at the Fran McCaffery era, and there are a lot of high water marks. There is plenty that you can look at and say that he's done a good job with the program. First, you just start of the program that he inherited, coming in after the Todd Licklider era, and just how ugly that time was. Licklider's final season, they went 10-22, 4-14 in the Big Ten. They were awful. 322nd in the country in adjusted tempo. They were slow. They were bad. It was not an entertaining product, and the fans started to turn away. Fran McCaffery came in, and by year number 2, they made the NIT. Year number 3, they should have been an NCAA tournament team outside of getting absolutely jobbed and hosed in the Big Ten tournament against Michigan State when they held a big lead, and it slipped away because the refs swallowed their whistles. Ted Valentine, after that one, didn't do Iowa basketball games anymore. That's how incompetent his crew was in that one. They let it slip away. Yet, the season didn't come to a close. Iowa went out, got to the championship game of the NIT. They beat Maryland on the road to get to the Final Four, beat Maryland then in the first game at Madison Square Garden before ultimately falling to Baylor in that championship game. And then, since then, it's been tournaments. More years than not, an NCAA tournament team. They had made, during the run, 7 NCAA tournaments during a 9-year period. That is something that hadn't happened at Iowa in its history. Dr. Tom Davis did not have a run of 7 tournaments in 9 years. It didn't happen. He didn't have that kind of consistency. Before this season, there were only 2 programs that had 500 or better records in the Big Ten, 10 of the last 11 years. Michigan State, who's made every NCAA tournament the last 27 seasons, and these Iowa Hawkeyes coached by Fran McCaffery. But the knock, as we know, is lack of success in March. Now, the biggest part of that was, of course, what happened in the NCAA tournament. The one and dones, the round of 32, and that's it. And the back-to-back losses and the years losing to Villanova and Gonzaga in the round of 32 and just getting outclassed in both of them. They had a shot against Tennessee one year, had a great path to make a run after they won the Big Ten championship, but ultimately never could break down that door. And that was the downfall. There was more to it coming on the heels of the 2020 season, that 2021 year, that Iowa was good, had a really good season that season, And when you look back at that year, yes, it ended to Oregon in the NCAA tournament, but you had a National Player of the Year in Luka Garza. You had a fun squad to watch. Wieskamp, Bohannon, CJ Frederick, Connor McCaffery, obviously the Murray twins coming off the bench, a freshman Patrick McCaffery. That was a team. And that was a team that could do a lot of damage. They came down the stretch. They won 7 out of 8. Get to the NCAA tournament as a 2 seed, and they ran into a bad matchup. But it was not just that loss, and that was tough. But it was also the part of it where it wasn't full attendance, where we didn't get a season where we were able to see Carver-Hawkeye Arena packed. And for people to get back into the building and see not just a good team, but also kind of fall in love with the Hawkeyes again. And as basketball, college basketball has changed, as Hawkeye basketball has changed, viewing habits have changed, on and on and on. They missed a window at that time. They continued, got to the Big Ten tournament. Everything was looking really good as they made that run for the first time, win the Big Ten tournament, and then they lose to Richmond, and a bad Richmond team. I mean, they just, it's unthinkable. Following year, back to the tournament again, losing the first round to Auburn. And now these last 2 seasons, 19 and 15 last year, 17 and 16 this year. It's come to an end. The fan base is checked out. And is it fair to Fran McCaffery? No. Is it fair that they've been able to put this together in this fashion? That Fran McCaffery's been able to rebuild this program and he's going to be ousted? Probably not. Different people probably deserve different. This is all-time winningest coach. And for the second time, I was going to be exiting their all-time winningest coach in unceremonious fashion. But it has to be done. The attendance figures are awful. It's embarrassing to see what Carver-Hawkeye Arena's turned into and the way that this fan base is checked out. Being a Hawkeye fan means something. It means something in this state, in this region, in this conference. And what it's turned into for men's basketball at Carver, it's unthinkable. But it's the reality. And there's no more sugarcoating what needs to be done. You have to fire Fran McCaffery. As we found out in the postgame after the loss to Illinois, Fran McCaffery he's not going to exit quietly. He's not going to retire because he's not ready to retire. He's not going to quit because he's owed $4.2 million. So you want to move on as an athletic department. You want to move on and move this program to a different spot. You're going to have to fire Fran McCaffery. That is the reality. Beth Goetz needs to do this quick. And as we continue Locked On Hawkeyes, that's where we're going to go next. This decision, because it's not as simple as just make a firing and away we go. There are so many more components. The decision of Beth Goetz, what needs to be done, how it needs to be done. We'll talk about that next. Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your banking account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. And that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you can stop managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much money we were spending online shopping. Now I can budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Make sure you use the code It's Locked On College at monarchmoney.com. That's going to get you 50% off your first year. Again, monarchmoney.com with the code Locked On College for half off your first year. monarchmoney.com. Back with you one final time. This is Locked On Hawkeyes, and I'm Trent Condon. All right, Beth Goetz the decision. How this needs to go down, how this needs to happen, the firing of Fran McCaffery. And because Fran is not willing to walk away, to take, I guess, an easier way out for all parties involved, the way that it has to be done is for Swift. This needs to happen now. As we sit here late into the evening and into the early morning of Friday, the choice needs to be made right away. There is no reason to let this thing linger. Iowa cannot afford to fall behind the eight ball. We're seeing firings happening. There's already 2 openings in the Big Ten. Indiana, that is flush with cash. And then Minnesota, that should be, but isn't, in a professional sports market up in Minneapolis. They fired an alum in Ben Johnson. And then in the middle of the night, acted very quickly after they lost in their opening game at the Big Ten tournament to Northwestern. They made the decision swift. And that's what Iowa is going to have to do. Make this decision quickly. Don't let it linger. And the decision one way or the other. I'm speaking like Beth Goetz has made the decision that the firing is happening and it's inevitable. I believe that it is. Now, there's still work that has to be done, and we'll get into that with Beth Goetz. But she has had now the better part of a month and a half. I mean, you look back at this season, and you look back at this Iowa team, we knew way back in the middle of January, when they went out to LA and got pulverized by USC and UCLA, that this thing was over. And then they come back against Minnesota, lose that one. By that time, you knew this is a dead season. And what was still in front of them, Owen Freeman shutting it down. We knew, call it a season, right? It's over. So the background is there. The looking after money also is a big part of it. The financial component of getting the buyout money, what it's going to take to bring a new coach in, buyouts that are going to happen there, building a staff. But the most important component about this is the NIL part of it, because you got to pay players. And Iowa has fallen so far behind their peers in the Big Ten. We're talking bottom of the rung. 16th, 17th, 18th place, something like that, in terms of NIL budget in the Big Ten. At Iowa, yes, it's a small public university. Understand. However, this is one where Iowa shouldn't be this far behind. People have chosen, obviously, to support football, support women's basketball, support wrestling. And that all takes a ding. But Iowa shouldn't be at this spot. We don't know how things are going to ultimately look in college athletics, but there are athletic departments that have a lot less money, that have a lot less income, that don't have the television revenue that the University of Iowa Athletic Department has, that have been able to get buyouts a lot bigger than what it's going to cost to buy out Fran McCaffery. This should not be a financial situation. That should not be at the top of the consideration as it pertains to the buyout. Can you bring in a hire, though, that is going to excite this fan base, that you can build back up? There was excitement for Fran McCaffery. We've seen excitement. Steve Alford brought excitement. Excitement can be built and built pretty quickly. But you got to find the guy. And then you need to reconnect with this fan base. And if it's a barnstorming tour, if it's different events, if it's bringing back the primetime league, whatever it is, something needs to be done to rebuild this fan base that has been lost. A lost generation. We're now talking about 27 years without a Sweet 16 appearance. Look, I'm 44. I got memories. We got people in their mid-30s that don't have great memories of Iowa basketball. We even played in a Sweet 16. I mean, how crazy is that? But that is the reality. We got to rebuild this thing. And that's going to be another big component. You look at the candidates, the ones that have been bandied about the most. Darren DeVries with the Iowa connections out of West Virginia after his first year. You have Ben McCollum and what he's been able to do at Indiana. At Drake, but Indiana possibly also involved. Those are the two at the top of the list that most people talk about. Neither of those guys are the most dynamic personality wise. So, how do you get to that direction? It's not going to be easy, but it has to be swift. Don't let this thing linger. Don't go into the weekend. Get it done on Friday. If it's a Friday news dump, so be it. Whatever it is, just get it done. I like Fran. I've defended Fran. I don't like the way that it ended, but it's apropos of the era. You give up 100 points, you play an entertaining basketball game, you score a ton, you lose, and Fran McCaffery gets ejected. Fran McCaffery gets ejected, 2 technical fouls. Must have said a magic word. Should he have been run? No. It's a 9-point game, 69-60 at the time. They get 4 free throws, and Iowa can never really get back over the hump after that. It was the first technicals of the year. And that also shows you just how different this season was. The sideline demeanor for Fran McCaffery with his hands in his pockets was so different than what we saw. And he changed last year. It went to another level this year. But maybe for one final time, we got to see the Fran that we'll remember. Fiery, red-faced, calling people names, going from 0 to 100 in a matter of a snap of a finger. Fran was back. We got to see that Fran. Maybe we got to see that Fran one final time. We'll be back with you with a rapid reaction podcast after Beth Goetz makes the decision. I anticipate we're going to find out something quick. It is going to be something that happens on Friday. If not, it'll be another swing and a miss from the University of Iowa Athletic Department, but we've also grown accustomed to that. Thanks for being with us as always and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Again, back with you, rapid reaction, whatever happens here on this front. I'll be on the road making my way out to Cleveland, my niece's baptism. So we'll do it remotely. We got you covered, though, on Locked On Hawkeyes because, well, we can take the equipment anywhere, and we will do just that. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Hey, also don't forget, obviously, March Madness is here. There's so much going on. We got a great program here on the Locked On Network. It is Locked On College Basketball. Andy Patton, Isaac Shoddy, doing everything on the college basketball front. The most informed college basketball fan is you after you listen to Locked On College Basketball. Find Locked On College Basketball right here on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll talk to you again, I'm sure, sometime over the weekend. Brackets will be set on the women's side. We'll talk about that. Of course, find out their destination next week and what is going to happen with this basketball job. That's all to come here. Locked On Hawkeyes, your team every day. That's what we do. Thanks for being with us. Go Hawks.